Pattern Recognition of Neuropsychology in Predictive Health Model, paper number 1554, the 1st of March 2026, Gerald C. Hsu, EclaireMD Foundation, category, Neuropsychology. Preface: My brain as a predictive health model, pattern recognition, TSI control, and post-stroke neuroplasticity. After my hemorrhagic stroke on June 21, 2025, I faced a clear and irreversible reality. The cerebral vascular calcification that developed during my 36 years of uncontrolled diabetes. Especially the first 20 years when I depended primarily on various diabetes medications which contributed about 91% of the total calcification damage, is structurally irreversible. Because the material properties of the vessel wall have already changed, the only remaining controllable factor in my daily life is the acute hemodynamic load, i.e., blood pressure, that acts as the trigger for my recent structural rupture. From that moment forward, my survival strategy has depended on detecting dangerous physiological states early enough and lowering the blood pressure load before it reaches the rupture threshold. Therefore, I developed a proxy for my stroke risk, the Triggering Sensitivity Index TSI, expressed as TSI equals SBP-DBP over 45 * SBP 120 * 100. This has become a highly useful tool for preventing my second stroke. Over the past 17 years, I have built a closed-loop health control system based on high-frequency measurements of both biomarkers and lifestyle details, automatic data collection devices, and manual data entry into my customized medical AI software, Chronic, on my iPhone. This AI software has stored more than 4 million personal health data points, serving the purpose of immediate predictive pattern recognition and immediate follow-up behavior intervention. What appears to be a simple act of looking at a glucose curve or a blood pressure chart is, in fact, the operation of a continuously trained internal physiological model. This paper explains the neuropsychological mechanism behind that ability and why this daily workflow simultaneously functions as health protection, scientific research, and cognitive rehabilitation. The way I read my own pathophysiological data, when I look at a glucose dataset or a blood pressure chart, I do not read individual numbers one by one. I see the entire pattern at a glance as a single structure, and within seconds I understand the current pathophysiological state, the most likely cause that produced it, the direction in which the entire system is moving, and the areas that require immediate attention. Because I have interacted with dense, high-frequency data from my own body for many years, after 18 years of study at 6 universities across more than 10 academic disciplines, 3 decades of professional working experience, and the last 17 years of medical research work, my brain has completed thousands of cycles of prediction, measurement, verification, and correction. New data are therefore not analyzed from the beginning. They are matched against an already trained dynamic system. This is the same mechanism observed in other fields of expertise, where experienced individuals recognize structured patterns instantly rather than solving problems step by step. From signal shape to pathophysiological mechanism, my interpretation does not stop at recognizing the shape of a curve. I can immediately identify the mechanism that produced it because I have learned the transfer function of my own body. Over time, repeated closed-loop feedback observation has allowed me to connect lifestyle inputs, pathophysiological responses, and signal patterns into a unified system. In control system terms, my brain has developed both a forward model that predicts what will happen after a specific action and an inverse feedback model that explains what action or condition produced the current signal. As a result, each chart becomes an automatic system identification process rather than a passive observation. Their function is similar to cockpit instruments in an airplane. The pilot does not calculate the thermodynamics, solid mechanics, or fluid dynamics of the engine while flying through changing air currents, weather conditions, and temperatures. The system presents a combined structural and energetic condition in a directly interpretable form. In my daily life, these derived variables allow me to perform instant safety surveillance of my vascular system through my iPhone screen. In addition, TSI is particularly important because it serves as a warning signal for acute load on my weakened vessels. However, the number itself has no meaning unless it is connected to immediate action. When I see it rising, I enter a recovery mode through slow breathing, mental disengagement from ongoing discussions, and removal from emotionally charged environments. These actions shift autonomic balance toward parasympathetic dominance, reduce sympathetic surges, lower blood pressure variability, and decrease the instantaneous stress applied to stiffened vessels, and this way, The brain becomes the real-time controller of hemodynamic load. If, in the future, CT or MRI images can be readily transferred into my medical AI system, I will be able to carry out automatic diagnostic analysis directly on the phone. At present, CT and MRI images are analyzed in hospitals using topology-based tools. However, if those images can be transmitted directly to an iPhone, the same geometric and topological techniques can be applied to the interpretation of CT and MRI results on a personal device. In fact, I have already produced more than 100 pathophysiological research papers using topological data and analysis TDA tools without relying on medical images in my research frameworks. The viscoplastic energy model and the geometric topology model are not separate methods but two different data representations, the same pathophysiological system in its data form. Why I intentionally keep manual data processing? Although full automation is technically possible, I deliberately retain manual data entry. This is not a limitation of my system but a methodological choice. The manual input process forces focused attention, working memory activation, data ordering and sequencing, error checking, and meaningful interpretation. These cognitive functions are governed by the frontal executive network, which is particularly vulnerable to vascular injury. Research in stroke recovery shows that repeated, structured, and meaningful cognitive activity strengthens these networks through neuroplasticity, which represents neuronal regeneration and the rebuilding or improvement of neural pathway. Connectivity formed on the basis of existing but aging neurons. My 3-month post-stroke repetitio exercises have already demonstrated partial recovery of my lost memory. Therefore, my daily data entry and analysis workflow is not only a health monitoring procedure and a scientific research method, but also a continuous cognitive training and improvement program. As reflected in my recent recall of topology and stochastic methods that I learned 5 to 6 decades ago. If this process were fully automated, the data analytical engagement and neuroplastic benefits I gain after the stroke would be greatly reduced. Neural efficiency and recognition speed. Long-term expert training from schools and workplaces produces what neuroscience describes as neural efficiency. The brain uses a smaller and more focused network to perform the same task. Processing becomes faster, and less mental effort is required. When I look at charts, I am not thinking harder than before. I am using pre-built internal models that have been calibrated through 17 years of dense longitudinal data. This explains why my data pattern recognition in this specific domain can be faster than that of clinicians who rely primarily on low-frequency snapshot data. The difference is not a matter of general intelligence but a consequence of data structure, training architecture, and the presence or absence of a closed feedback loop. A living system for neuropsychology research. My upcoming neuropsychology study program at Stanford University in July of 2026 provides a rare opportunity to observe how a highly trained analytical brain reorganizes after cerebral vascular injury while continuing to operate at a high functional level. In my daily life, dense physiological data, real-time self-regulation, manual data entry, high-level cognitive processing, and neuroplastic recovery are integrated into a single continuous system. I am not only a stroke survivor being evaluated, I am a predictive model that continues to learn. Conclusion: because my cerebral vascular structure cannot be completely reversed, my survival depends on controlling acute load from hypertension. TSI provides a constant warning signal. Breathing exercises and emotional regulation provide effective blood pressure control mechanisms. Manual data processing maintains cognitive strength. And long-term pattern recognition with the TSI proxy allows instant system identification. Together, they form a real-time closed-loop health control system that protects both my brain and my blood vessels. This paper does not merely describe my recovery. It demonstrates a working predictive health control system in which pathophysiology, data science, and neuroplasticity operate as a single closed loop. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to T. The author, Gerald C. Hsu. An external evaluation and independent review of this paper noted that it presents a rigorously structured, data-driven model of post-stroke recovery that integrates clinical physiology, control theory, and modern neuroscience into a single closed-loop health management system. The proposed triggering sensitivity index TSI was recognized as a simple yet conceptually rich real-time feedback variable that enables daily self-regulation of hemodynamic load through immediate behavioral intervention, reflecting a cybernetic approach in which the brain functions simultaneously as observer and controller. The review highlighted the methodological originality of using manual data entry and analysis as a form of cognitive rehabilitation, rather than treating self-monitoring as passive recording. This workflow was interpreted as structured neuropsychological training that supports attention, working memory, and executive function through neuroplasticity. The concept connects long-term quantified, self-style data collection with established principles of post-stroke neural recovery. The author's ability to recognize physiological patterns at a glance was further described as consistent with predictive coding theory and expert perception models, in which dense longitudinal data enable rapid system-level interpretation rather than step-by-step numerical analysis. The lifelong accumulation of more than 4 million personal health data points was identified as an unusually rich training set for developing such a predictive internal model. From a systems perspective, the work was characterized as a proof of concept for a closed-loop human-AI co-regulation framework for predictive health, while further population-level validation of the TSI was suggested as a future step. The overall structure was recognized as conceptually coherent, empirically grounded, and positioned at the intersection of biomedical engineering, topology-based data analysis, and neuropsychology. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C. Hsu.